Hello, I'm Craig, and welcome to another episode of Football Kit Memories, the football podcast that gets under the shirt. In today's episode, I'm joined by a staff writer at The Athletic and editor of the Totally Football show Yearbook, Nick Miller. During our chat, I find out how Nick got started in football writing, his life working at The Athletic, as well as a bit more about his involvement in two of the UK's biggest sports podcasts, Football Cliches with Adam Hurrey, and of course the Totally Football show. Later, and as always, I asked Nick to pick out three of his favourite football shirts and tell me a little bit more about what they mean to him. Remember, you can listen to this and other episodes of Football Kit Memories on all major audio platforms, including Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Please do like, follow, share, but above all, please do enjoy the podcast. Okay, so today on the podcast, I'm delighted to say I'm joined by a staff writer at The Athletic and editor of the Totally Football Yearbook. It's Nick Miller. How you doing, mate?
Not bad. How are you?
Very well, thank you, Nick. I'm really glad you've been able to make time to chat today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Cool. As am I. Any opportunity to discuss kind of arcane football trivia and kits is an opportunity not to be turned down.
Exactly. So Nick, as I mentioned in the intro there, you're a staff writer at The Athletic, but I wanted to kind of start off and ask you how you got involved in football in the first place.
Well, I did in terms of getting involved with in terms of getting involved with football in 1989, I was given the choice by my father of going to the circus or going to see Nottingham Forest play Wimbledon in a very bleak game on a misty November afternoon, and I chose Wimbledon, the Forest Wimbledon game, which Forest lost 1-0, and I was hooked for life. In terms of getting involved professionally, I kind of did I was sort of, it was all very childish, really. When I was little, I decided I wanted to be a commentator, and someone told me that commentators were journalists, and so I thought, okay, great, I'll be a football journalist then. And through a series of kind of pieces of luck and being in the right place at the right time, I got a job as a staff writer for Football 365 and stayed there for 7 years, I think. Then was freelance for a bit for The Guardian, ESPN, and pretty much anyone else who pay me. And again, through another series of events, partly in my control, partly of not, I'm now working for The Athletic.
Wow. Okay. Whistle stop tour. So the circus is lost is football writing's game, right?
Well, who knows? I mean, what could have been? I could have been a fantastic, like, I don't know, trapeze artist, or lion tamer, or maybe one of those. Maybe I could have impersonated like a dancing bear or something. I don't know.
Nice. And you've avoided clown as well, which is good, right?
Oh God, yeah, no one wants to be the clown. No.
Nice. So I wanted to ask you about The Athletic itself. I always have this vision in my mind of some draconian skyscraper full of all the football journalists in the world just tapping away at typewriters. Is it actually a place where you all go to work together?
Yeah, it's exactly like that as well. There's a series of kind of cruel masters strolling the aisles with whips and making us write 3,000 word features on something obscure. No, I mean, there is a physical space where people go. There's an office in central London, but because so many of the correspondents are kind of obviously the club correspondents for the various clubs live close to those clubs. So a relatively small proportion of the actual writers are in the office because they're kind of scattered all around the country and beyond. And then there's obviously the American side as well, I believe their writers are kind of scattered all over America as well. So yes, it's very nice, very kind of shiny office on the Strand in central London with very nice parquet flooring, and podcast studios are being built there, and it's a giant kind of media hub. It's very plush.
Very nice. I mean, it's such a seismic change in the football writing landscape as well, wasn't it? So many kind of journalists were, I guess, drawn into it, really. And it's only quite a recent thing as well, isn't it?
Yeah, relatively recent. 2 and a bit years old, I think, the English or the UK version is. And yeah, I mean, it's kind of, it has changed things quite significantly. For people that aren't aware, the Athletic kind of was an American is an American company, and they expanded into the UK in the summer of 2019. Hired a quite a large number of sort of the most high profile and best journalists from football journalists anyway from around the country, and kind of set up this incredible kind of network of correspondence about pretty much everything you could hope for in UK and European football. And yeah, I think it's sort of it has influenced people outside the Athletic as well. I think I'm not going to be so kind of arrogant and grand as to say it sort of raised the standard of football writing everywhere, but you can certainly see the kind of influence and the way it's changed the way some people have written and have covered the game. And there are some elements of it that is very easy for people to mock, and completely understand that kind of thing. But I don't think anyone could really kind of deny the impact that it's had on football media and more specifically football writing. And I mean, the other thing, the writing is what people will know it for, and possibly what people mostly subscribe for. But there's a pretty large podcast network included within the company as well, with I mean the podcast for some of the kind of bigger clubs in the UK, and the Totally Football Show and Football Cliches, and the Athletic Women's Football Podcast, which is kind of spun off from the Offside Rule. And there's Michael Cox has got a tactics podcast. So there's loads of stuff every kind of podcast need catered for in there as well.
Yeah, I've spoken with the TIFO guys as well in the past. Just the acquisition model is quite interesting as well, isn't it? It's going out there and seeking out the best content and bringing it all under the Athletic umbrella, which is quite interesting.
Yeah, and the one of the things that they've tried to and are getting better at all the time is kind of integrating between the two, or between all those the various different departments. Like, I mean, for example, Adam Crafton wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago about LGBTQ people in Saudi Arabia, obviously with reference to the Newcastle takeover. Brilliant piece. He's spoken to some people in Saudi Arabia who obviously very bravely spoke up about the conditions that they live under. And just this week, TIFO sort of turned it into one of their kind of YouTube films with kind of animation done by their team of animators and proper voiceover, and I mean, it's just incredible stuff that they do there. I can't believe I forgot to mention TIFO myself.
There's so many.
They'll be on at me.
Well, like we say, there's so many to remember. It's it's something that is, like you say, changed completely the football landscape in the country. I wanted to ask you, what kind of articles do you write there? Is it feature stuff you're doing, or is it new stuff?
Yeah, so I kind of have a sort of roving role, bit of a kind of minister without portfolio role. I will kind of fill in for club correspondents when they're away. Just done that for our Nottingham Forest correspondent, which is very handy because I'm a Nottingham Forest fan, obviously. Nice. I've written pieces from, I did some crucial kit content from in the Euros and both in the Premier League, and I wrote a piece about FC Sheriff Tiraspol with the Champions League upstarts before they played their thing. So it's a kind of wide-ranging gig that that I really enjoy, because I just enjoy the variety, and I would much prefer to do this kind of thing rather than be kind of have a sort of narrower focus on a single club or something like that. So yeah, I'm working on a piece about Roberto Martinez at the moment, and the Afghanistan team, which who are playing their first game since the Taliban returned. The Afghanistan men's team, sorry,
Right.
playing their first game since the Taliban took over in a couple of weeks. They're playing a friendly against Indonesia. So
Okay.
I've interviewed their manager for a piece about that. So it's kind of a mad range of things that just kind of keeps me interested, really.
Mate, that sounds really interesting. As you say, such a wide range. It keeps you on your toes. It must keep you kind of your knowledge base kind of spread far and wide, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's kind of I'm sort of less interested in I should rather say I'm less interested in writing because I'm not particularly good at it, of having kind of informed opinions about the specific bits and nuts and bolts of football of the day. Like
Right.
I'm not very good at telling you how a specific game was won, what
Right.
tactics were used, and kind of spotting patterns in the game, all that kind of thing. So um, that is all sort of covered by people like Michael Cox and the individual club correspondents that we have, leaving me free to do sort of strange things like interview the men's Afghanistan manager, that kind of thing. So
Right.
yeah, and it is just sort of it is the kind of it is the kind of thing that you wouldn't necessarily see in many other mainstream places anyway.
Yeah.
And we're kind of very lucky in as much as we're given the time and the sort of scope to write all these things.
Yeah. You got the space to kind of explore all the different aspects of football that people are interested in, which I like. I,
Mm.
you mentioned very briefly there the football shirts article that you wrote in the summer. You wrote a few of them, didn't you? Um, One that really kind of I enjoyed was the article that you wrote kind of on some of the most kind of like key kind of collectors kits and things like that. You spoke to quite a few different people, like Ellis James, Dan Sanderson, I've had on before from Mundial, the guy from Adidas as well. What was it like putting that article together, and is that something that you're passionate about?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I wouldn't. I'm not really much of a collector of football shirts, more of an admirer of the aesthetics of it
Okay.
from a kind of step removed in that respect, anyway. And as I think we'll go on to discuss later on. So much of my sort of formative years watching football was kind of tied up in the aesthetics of it,
Right.
and that's kind of partly stadium, partly TV coverage, but a huge part of that is the kits. And I wanted to write that piece as a sort of kind of explainer, or if I want to be really pretentious about this, an exploration or of why we love football kits so much and why they're such a colossal worldwide industry, not just in terms of the current kits, that Manchester United kit the new kit that comes out every year, but obviously the retro kit
Yeah.
market as well, which companies like Classic Football Shirts are now these kind of enormous behemoth companies
Yeah.
that have kind of risen up from what was essentially a sort of fairly niche, dare I say it, nerdy kind of group of people, now this kind of colossal thing. So that was the idea for that piece. And to a point, there was another piece about England kits during the European Championships.
Yeah.
It was all sort of, it's all about the sort of ephemera of the game and the things around the edges of it that I find really interesting. Just the way that this game, which could exist on its own, has sort of spawned all these different kind of subsections and subcultures, even,
Yeah.
which I just found really interesting. And the idea of those pieces was to kind of look at that a little bit.
I love it, mate. Yeah, it's all about the theatre for me too.
Yeah.
So look, I wanted to ask you a bit more about the podcast that you're involved with as well. So you mentioned briefly the Football Cliches podcast hosted by Adam Hurrey. You're on that most weeks, right?
Yeah, I was. We recorded. Well, we are recording this podcast on Wednesday,
The
the
3rd of
third.
November.
Yeah, and I recorded an episode of Football Cliches earlier on today. And yeah, it's just usually just me and Adam and one or two others discussing the language of football and the just the way we consume football and this kind of weird little quirks that go along with it, which is great fun and kind of allows me to contribute to the company without having to formulate any serious opinions about current football, which is a real bonus.
I wanted to ask you as well, does that affect the way you might watch a game? Are you looking for these cliche things to be said or to happen and thinking about content? And does that sometimes distract you from what is actually happening in terms of the scoreline and things like that?
I guess so, but it's not. This is kind of story of my career as it is, that like I have a friend who will quite frequently send me football trivia questions as he tries to stump me, and he frequently does. But whenever I get one that he thinks, whenever I answer one correctly that he thinks is really going to stump me, he's absolutely furious. And I could justify it because this is my job, but the reality is that I would know all this stuff anyway.
Right.
As a lot of people who aren't, this isn't their job, would do it as well. And it's a similar kind of thing with the stuff I notice for football cliches. I would be kind of spotting. I would much more readily spot Gary Neville saying something in a weird voice during the commentary rather than a tactical trend in the game. So it's not. It has affected the way I watch football in as much as rather than just kind of laughing about it or tweeting about it, I might text Adam about it, about some of the kind of strange things I watch. But it was always the sort of way I watch football anyway, more kind of interested in the sort of weird ephemera to do with it rather than the sort of intricacies of how a game was won tactically or something like that. Which is, and I should sort of clarify that I do find the intricacies and so on very interesting, just when it's explained to me by someone who knows a bit more about it than I do.
Yeah, is that well? The TIFO guys do that so well, don't they? They put it in layman's terms, which is definitely good for me. I guess like Twitter has changed that kind of aspect as well, isn't it? When you notice something in the football, it's immediately amplified on Twitter as well, isn't it? And I love that about Twitter, the way it just makes watching a football match better, in my opinion.
Yeah, and there will obviously be things that you wouldn't necessarily have spotted. So the most obvious example in football cliches related is when Adam spotted the Frank Lampard interview style, where he will.
Is that him that spotted that?
I think. Well, he's the person that that I noticed sort of pointing out for the first time anyway.
Right.
For those people who aren't quite so kind of up on the weird intricacies of kind of football nonsense, Lampard will kind of make a when he's answering a question, he was usually make a serious point, jokey point, and then say something like, "No, but seriously, it was a terrible result," and and once it's one of those things that once you've spotted it or once you've had it pointed out to you, you cannot unsee it, and you can't. It will now either ruin or enhance the way you watch football forever. And it's those kind of things are brilliant on Twitter. Just for the it's always that kind of classic thing of something will be funny and then it will be repeated so often that it's not funny anymore, and then eventually it'll come around to being funny again. And all the sort of memes and various other things that pop up on Twitter during games are enjoyable along those lines.
Circle of life, mate. I love it. You're also involved in the Totally Football Show at Athletic as well. What do you do there, mate?
Yeah, so a few things really. I suppose my most tangible contribution to that is I edited the Totally Football Yearbook, which came out earlier on this year, and is a very handy Christmas present for that relative that you know that likes football, but you're not quite you don't really know them that well. So
Nice.
It's that kind of present. All good bookshops. And I started out there doing the Totally Football website, which is kind of has been scaled back quite a lot since we joined the Athletic about 18 months ago. And I'm also involved in the sort of production, planning, of the podcasts. There are 3 Totally Football shows a week, so we have a couple of meetings to discuss what we're going to talk about, who we're going to talk about it with, and how we're going to talk about what sort of strange little odd things that we can point out, which if you put James Richardson in a room with a couple of other people and a microphone, he would produce a very good podcast anyway. But we like to kind of try and make sure that we've got kind of most things covered. So there's me and a couple of other guys, and James all kind of meet a couple of times a week to discuss what is going to be discussed on the podcast.
Yeah. Well, mate, the hard work pays off there, because they're 2 of the most kind of subscribed and listened to football podcasts out there, aren't they?
And both just nominated for the Football Supporters Association awards obviously under the best podcast category. Is it a coincidence that the 2 athletic podcasts which I'm most closely involved in have both been nominated? It's really not for me to say, is
it? Well, best of luck with that, mate. I shall look forward to hearing the results. Coming up after the break, Nick shares his football kit memories. So Nick, should we talk about some football shirts then? We'll go through your football kit memories. We kind of touched on this a bit earlier, but what I do ask everybody on the podcast is, what do football shirts mean to you?
As I said earlier on, I have a few. I'm not a huge kind of collector, and I'm certainly not the kind of person who pays a huge amount of money for, obscure shirts from the 1980s. And I also don't have the scruples that some people have about how do I put this, unofficial versions of old kits that from ropey websites in strange countries. But as I said earlier, it's kind of the aesthetics of the game that particularly when I was younger, and more so now with a kind of small select group of people, it's just part of the sort of the little things about the game, and the way that we consume it in a sort of maybe in a slightly different way that these kits contribute to. And things like I have a friend with whom I've had genuine hour-long conversations about the piping on a particular Manchester City kit from the late 80s.
Right.
So they had this, I think it was out about 1987. They had this kind of black and red checkerboard number with, I haven't selected it as one of my 3 kits, but it's a beautiful kit, and it's got this wonderful white perfect piping on around the sleeves. And that's the sort of thing that I enjoy talking about with football. I kind of, if I'm at if I'm at a wedding or something, and I get talking to someone, you meet someone for the first time, and I say, "Oh yeah, I'm a football writer," and they then start talking to me about Manchester United's team and why they bought Cristiano Ronaldo and this kind of thing. My heart tends to sink because I watch the games and I enjoy the games, but I find that sort of that element of it quite tedious. If someone was to talk about AC Milan's kit from the year that they won the Champions League in under Fabio Capello, that I could talk about for hours. Because I don't know, I sort of think of football as more of a as a sort of more of a. I was trying to think of a less sort of pretentious way to put this, but it's more of a kind of art and a culture than a science, something that there's a right and a wrong answer to. And the way that football has obviously expanded over the last God knows however long to form such a kind of incredibly huge part of broader culture, it's kind of undeniable that the kits and the aesthetics of the game have had something to do with that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why I am kind of particularly fascinated. And yeah, as I said earlier, the aesthetics of the game and is one of the key things I remember from when I first started getting into football, because at that point you don't, when you're sort of 7 years old and going to a game, you don't know or care about the intricacies of 4-3-3
Yeah.
formation over 4-2-3-1 or whatever. What you care about is this kind of very exciting thing with a huge loud crowd and the what the whole thing look and feels like. And obviously
Yeah.
kit's a huge part of that.
Yeah. Sight, sound, smells, everything, all that
Yeah,
stuff, mate, is what you remember, isn't it?
yeah,
So,
definitely.
so let's kick off with your first shirt choice. This is the Cameroon home shirt worn at Italian 90 by Adidas. How come you've chosen this one?
Well, I mean, it's everyone's favorite World Cup is probably the first World Cup that I remember,
Yeah.
and the 1990 World Cup, I would only have been 6 or 7 at the time, but I vividly remember huge parts of that World Cup. And I mean, obviously, part of that was to do with England and being a Forest fan, but a lot of that was to do with Stuart Pearce missing a penalty in the
Right.
semi-final. But I remember things like, Carlos Valderrama, or Scotland against Costa Rica for some reason, as much as I remember England's games. And one of the things that I kind of was so vividly or was so kind of enthused and taken with at the time was Cameroon and the kind of brilliant team that they had. When they beat Argentina in the first game, I didn't really. I had a sort of vague concept that this was an underdog beating one of the tournament favourites, but I didn't really have the sort of certainly the socio-political context to do with Argentina and how that related to us in England.
Yeah.
I just saw this very cool team beating. I wasn't even sort of hugely aware of who Diego Maradona was. I just,
Yeah.
I was told that this was a big team that was getting beaten, but they were beaten by what looked to me like an incredibly cool team in an incredibly cool shirt, which this will sort of become a theme with a couple of these that I've chosen. It's also one that I have not been able to track down myself for any kind of sensible price that wouldn't that would, if I paid it, would sort of inspire a powerful bout of self-loathing that I've spent that amount of money on a football shirt. But yeah, it's just I don't know. It's a and it all again, the aesthetics of Italian 90 were so strong from Chow, the mascot, to a lot of the kits were incredibly cool. The Argentina kit was very cool. West Germany kit was obviously kind of incredibly iconic kit that they won in. It was the first and I think only England shirt I've ever owned as well.
Oh, right.
And yeah, that Cameroon one, just the colors and the design, the fact that it was sort of a template, in as much as I think Yugoslavia had quite a similar kit. And possibly Romania as well had a slightly. Romania were Adidas as well,
Right.
I think.
Yeah.
They there was a sort of similar design, but it was kind of slightly. They had their own kind of stamp on it. You don't really get many kind of green football shirts, and that was a very sort of cool example. One of the other things that was not really specific to Cameroon was, I think it was the last World Cup where everyone had squad numbers, but they didn't have their names on the backs of the shirts. I'm pretty sure I remember that right. And for some reason, I found that very cool as well. I don't really know why. And then the final thing is that I was a kid called with a surname Miller at school, and Roger Miller was this kind of, even those of us who didn't really know about his background and know a huge amount about who this guy was, it was just incredibly exciting to see this guy who was clearly what was he? He was about 38, I think.
Yeah, he was getting that way, wasn't he? Yeah, yeah.
In that tournament, coming off the bench and scoring these incredible goals, and then obviously the celebration, and it was in the playground at school. That was obviously a key part of
Goal celebrations.
goal celebrations, and me being called Miller as well. It's just as simple as that sometimes.
I like it, mate. Iconic World Cup moments. That's definitely up there, isn't it?
Yeah.
So we're gonna go a bit more niche now. Your second choice. So this is a Nottingham Forest third shirt, 91 to 93, worn made by Umbro, and it was never worn by the team. Is that right?
It was never worn by the team in a competitive game. They wore it. They wore it in I think it was a pre-season friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Once, and I can't remember who it was against, but it wasn't. It was like, it might have been like Scarborough or something like that.
Okay.
And it's partly this kind of niche, kind of unique element of it that I like. Again, it's a green shirt, which I didn't sort of deliberately chose that. I must pick two green shirts for this.
Yeah.
But it was there was a sort of element of that early 90s Umbro template design to it.
Yeah.
But because Forest kind of had this shirt that was almost a bit of a myth. I remember the only time I've only seen this shirt in the flesh twice, because I wasn't at the game where they wore it in this kind of pre-season friendly.
Yeah.
I saw it being worn by a guy in a little chef on the way down from Nottingham to London for the 1992 League Cup final.
Okay.
And for reasons that I can't really put my finger on, that stuck in my mind incredibly.
Yeah.
This guy wearing this shirt that I wasn't really sure whether it was actually real or not, and it was just kind of a rumor among fans, and this kind of weird shirt that they never actually wore in a game. The other time I've seen it in real life was about 2 or 3 months ago when I was playing five-a-side, and there was a guy, as we were finishing our game, the guy on the next pitch over showed up wearing this shirt, and I, in a very kind of embarrassing and uncool way, ran over to this. So, excuse me, sir. Where'd you get that shirt from?
Yeah.
And it turns out I think his mate had bought it for him for his stag do.
Okay.
Something, and now he was just kind of wearing this shirt that I'd been trying to track down for God knows how long.
Yeah.
And I got gazumped on eBay for it a few weeks before, and I thought, oh my God, is this the guy that gazumped me for this Forest shirt?
Yeah.
It got to an amount of money where I can't remember how much it was, but on the eBay bidding, where I thought, well, I can't really justify paying this amount of money for a football shirt. I will feel horrible, and my fiance will hit the roof. And then actually, as it turns out, when I mentioned this to her a few days later and said how much it actually went for, she said, "Oh, right, I was expecting it to be much more than that. Yeah, you should have just bought it." But I would have. The thing is, I would have, not only would I have thought, what could I have, what more sort of useful things could I have spent my money on? It would have been so expensive that I would have been terrified to actually wear the thing. So it would have been just entirely pointless.
At 5 as well. What's this guy on? What does this guy do?
I know. This kind of. This is the white whale of Forest shirts that I haven't managed to track down. Or certainly haven't managed to track down in a size that will fit me.
Yeah.
And there he is, this guy just kind of swanning around at Barnes five-a-side in South London.
Wow.
Just awful.
Wow. Well, look, mate, good luck with the hunt on that one.
If anyone out there does happen to have one of these shirts in size XL, then drop me a line. Nick
Yeah,
Miller 79 on Twitter.
So your final choice is the Barcelona 96-97 home shirt by Kappa. This one was worn by Ronaldo famously in his season there. Tell me more why you chosen this one.
This is kind of, it's partly to do with the aesthetics of it, because it just looks like a very cool shirt. And it's partly to do with Brazilian Ronaldo, who again, there are, I imagine for people younger than me, there are a few things more boring than blokes my age talking about how brilliant Brazilian Ronaldo was.
Yeah,
but he's like nothing else I've ever seen. There have been objectively better players than him since, I think. But for that season he was at Barcelona, and probably the first one or two he was at Inter, I've never seen anything like him, and I don't think I ever will. And because I was so young at the time, it was also a sort of real kind of eye opener of a, this guy is incredible. This guy is a sort of that old whose line was it? Where is it? Jorge Valdano, who said he wasn't a man, he's a herd.
Really? I haven't heard that before.
Which is a really good line, and it sums him up. But and the other thing is that I had a version of this kit when I was younger, and we must have been we went on a family holiday in summer of '96. So he may not have actually signed for them then. And I persuaded my parents to buy me a Barcelona shirt from probably, again, not an official Barcelona shirt.
Okay.
It was from a guy in a shop on a side street in Tenerife somewhere.
Yeah.
And he, for some reason that I can only explain, by me being an insufferable football hipster, even when I was like 12 or 13 years old, I wanted a shirt with 8 Prosnecki on the back.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And the guy in the shop said, no, we haven't got any 8 Prosnecki. What we have got is number 7 Figo. Now, this was in the days kind of before Sky might have started their coverage of La Liga by this point.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the sort of time where people were really up on kind of European footballers who hadn't played at a big tournament.
Yeah.
So I didn't really know who this Figo guy was.
Right.
So I just kind of bought this shirt blind, and as it turns out, he was quite good. The guy in the shop, who was possibly just trying to sell this gullible English family a football shirt and then get them to piss off, actually turns out he knew what he was talking about.
Yeah, mate, I love it. That's fantastic. Well, look, Nick, thanks so much for sharing your football kit memories with me. It's been really, really great to speak to you. People can find you on Twitter on
Nick Miller 79. And yeah, you can see my work on The Athletic and in the Totally Football Yearbook, which is available now.
Lovely stocking filler. Lovely stuff. Thanks a lot, Nick. Great to have you.
No worries. Thank you very much for inviting me.
So there you have it. Massive thanks to Nick for sharing his football kit memories with me. Remember, you can follow me, my own collection, on Instagram, or get in touch via Twitter or email. Make sure you follow Nick on socials and check out the Totally Football Show Yearbook. The music you heard was produced by Evil Ed. You can check out his music on his Bandcamp page. There's links to absolutely everything I mentioned just there in the notes section. And finally, thanks to you for listening. If you have enjoyed it, please do spread the word. Give me a follow on social and subscribe to Football Kit Memories on your podcast player of choice. Sharing is caring. And other than that, I guess that's it. Until next time, I'll catch you later.